Hi folks, I want to build a transform, animated transform this time. So like the transform node you know in Resolume, but I want to add Berlin noise animation to, let's do this and make it a bit smarter. Oh, this needs to have a big amplitude for you to see. So I want to have a master controller for this animation, and I want a more interesting animation, and the same. And I also want to repeat it on the edges. So that's a lot of stuff to build, but it will make a very powerful plugin in the end. And it's such a simple plugin that I don't want to sell it. I just want to explain you how to build it, and then you can build it yourself. And it's a great starting point for other stuff you want to build in the future. So first, let's start with a bit of the complex stuff. I want to use a 2D mesh to build this. So let's search for the 2D render and the mesh 2D. So the 2D render uses the mesh 2D for the geometry, the transform, and the materials. The material is your texture in, and for your geometry it likes rectangle 2D. And now you can see we have our video inside 2D render. Like I explained in my other tutorial, this one needs your aspect ratio. This in a 16:9 it's 1.77 times 2, and the height is 2. So now it's full screen, like you see, and we can use a transform 2D here. This one is faster than the transform, the regular transform, so that's this one. I don't know why this one is faster, but if you are working with mesh 2Ds, you try to use this one. I think in the latest updates this also has the anchor points, but I'm working in an old version of Wire and I don't have the anchor points here. So now we can output this texture out. You need a texture in and texture out to use this in Resolume, and we want to set this as an effect, and you can define all your names here and your descriptions and stuff in the patch info. This transform 2D is in a space of -1 to 1, so I amped up the amplitudes too high here for now, so we can go back to 1 again, and now you see it's moving on the X and the Y. But let's do something first. I want to wrap this video on the side so it doesn't show any black. And what we can do is use a texture material, input our video into that, and go put this in the materials. Now we can use wrap modes, but before we have to scale this up to 3, so it's bigger than the composition. And in the rectangle I used show all properties. I just used a hotkey, but here you can see your UV coordinates, and when we do a +2 and -1, -1. We go to the render. You can see now that, let's go to 1 back again. You can see that the video is repeating itself. And in the rep modes, we can choose the type of rep. And now when we use clamp, you can see that we create a white border. When we use alpha in the blend mode and discard, it goes transparent again. So we want to expose this so we can have those options. I don't know if we want to keep clamp, but that is something you can edit yourself. And now when we move this and scale it up to 3 and we choose a different mirror, now you can see that the edges are repeating. So this is very powerful, and it's nice that you can choose it. It's not something that the regular transform function will do. Something we'll still need to do is when we change our aspect ratio now. Oh, this aspect ratio is the same. You see it's not really mapping right, because the edges of our texture are not aligning, and you see that the squares are stretched. That's because these parameters here, the width and the height of our rectangle, are not aligning with our aspect ratio. They're not dynamic, they're hard values. So what we have to do for that is get our aspect ratio. So we need to info, patch info. And here we can see our aspect ratio. If we multiply this one now by 2 and insert it in our width, now you see everything is aligning again and square. The problem is this operation only works for landscapes, compositions, and we also want to have a system that works with portrait mode. So we have to play around with this. So now this value is more than 1. That indicates landscape video. But if we reverse that, 360 by 640, now it's in a portrait mode. You see now we have a value lower than 1. So we can use that to create a logic function. It's so now it's false is less than 1, and we can use a switch and use an multiply by 1. Oh, not multiply by 1, the other one, this one. Is this right? Oh, if it's false, okay, now it's value is false, and we still needed that other one, this one. So now we have the right aspect ratio again, and we want to do this in the height, and we want 1, I think, here, and then multiply by 2, and we want to multiply this with 2. Yeah, so now we have our right values, but we still need another switch. When this is false now, so we want to have a case when it's false, we have a 1 here, and we're going this to float 2, and we want another switch when it's false, and we want to add that value here, and when it's true, we want to go that value there. So now there's a 1 here, and here's the right one, and we want a 1 there. We're gonna put it in there. So now we have our aspect ratio in float 2, and we can use that to multiply by 2 and unpack. And now we have our width and our height. And now you see that the rectangle is shaping itself to the composition. Let's try that other resolutions, and you see it keeps aligning the way we want to. Let's organize this a bit. So this is that logic, and then get create a closed flow through, and then okay. So now this is dynamic, and we don't have to think about composition sizes again. Everything will align automatically. And we only have to do that for the rectangle. The other coordinate systems are always locked to, is that right? No, that's not really right. But we can use this this flow 2 aspect ratio to multiply the other axis, because we need to do the same thing for Berlin motion later on. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to have a float 2 for x and y, and I think we also want to have the ability to manually output this. And I think we want a range here, but it's up to you how you do this. If you want to use that range, I find it easier to have a range there. And we want to, let's have a look. If I shift this, let's select output. If I select it 1, how far will it move? It will not move the full width, because I think we multiply the scale by 3 here, or shall have a look if we multiply it by this one. No, now goes halfway, so we still need to multiply it by 2. Yeah, so now we can shift the full texture sideways. And we also want to expose the rotation. And I lock this always to 1, because 1 rotation is always 1 rotation. Now you see we have a bit of a problem, because it doesn't rotate around this. It rotates around the center, but we shifted this the center. So there are a few solutions for this, because the center point is not shifted when we not the center point. How does it called again? The anchor point is not shifted when we shift the x or the y axis. So when we rotate, it rotates around the old center point. And that's not something we like. So now we can choose to shift our UV values instead of our rectangle. So the UV values is the mapping of the video onto the rectangle instead of the rectangle itself. And then we have to work with these values here. So it can only use a box 2D, and we have to create a bit of math to do this. So we can delete that one. We're not going to use that one. Delete that wire. What we want is a 2 value here and a -1 value there. And that is our default position. So let's create an add and use a -1, -1 as the default position of the min. And let's create another one. I use Ctrl D for that, by the way. And here we want the default value to be 2. And does it work now? So now we can shift it on our axis without the rotation being outside of our screen. So this will always rotate in the center of our screen, and we can move around with this. In newer versions of Resolume, I think the Transform 2D has an anchor point, so you can use a negative value of your X and Y values to add to that. So you'll also be moving your anchor point, and then your rotation should always stay at the center. But in this version we have to do it like this, and this works fine also. And this will also work with the different wrap modes. So it looks the same this way, or if we do it in the 2D space, in the 2D transform. Okay, so now we have this and we have that, and we also want to have some scaling options, I think. So let's duplicate this one. I think we want a negative value here. Let's call it scale. And we want to add 2 because we want to end up, we want to add 3 because we want to end up in a scale of 3. So if we go negative, we do -1, and when we do positive, we do +1, and it looks like this is not enough. So maybe we should add 1 and then multiply this, so multiply that by 3. I think this is this too much? No. If you build it for yourself, you can judge that. You can change that value. So now we have the manual controls. And there are a few ways we can add the purlin to this. So we can say you want to add them. So then you create another add and add the purlin noise to it. And then the amplitude of your noise, of your purlin noise, determines the impact of it. So if you add a 2 and we scale this, so that will be your control function. The amplitude will be your control function. You can also use a crossfader or a switch. So if you want to fade between those 2 interactions, you can do this. But now we have to want an amplitude of 2 and an offset of 3, because 3 was our scaling. So we could have a wrap. So now you can fade between your values instead of add them. And depends on what kind of control you want to have. But I think an add is fine for now. Now I have to remove that offset of 3. An offset of 3 in a Berlin noise, then the noise will start at 3 and your amplitude of 1 will bounce around in that. So the default range of a Berlin is 1 and it will be +1, -1. If you want only the plus, you do unpolar. So now, because we have an offset of 3, we have a value between 3 and 4. And then a 0, it will be 0 to 1. That does the offset. Offset does that. Let's add to all our motions. We already have an add here. We can add another input there. I don't know if this is the most intuitive way for you to build it this way, but it's the most powerful way, I think. So we have frequencies, amplitude. Is this the easiest way? No, let's build it like we would for beginners. So that's how much. We have 4 different values we want to animate. So let's have 4 burdens. You can all expose these functions separately, but that will give too much parameters for me, and I like to keep it a bit, how do you say, overzichtelijk is it in Dutch, but a compact amount of parameters, otherwise you just get lost. A way to, in the new versions you can create groups here. I don't have the new version, so I usually make a data input without data, so this will be manual, and just slide it here, and now you duplicate another one, animation. So, and our frequency will be below that. So now we separated our inputs or parameters a bit. Yes. So the amplitude, this is our amplitude for scale. Okay, let's talk about MIDI. So I want to rename this scale, but I already have a parameter here called scale. So if I want to use OSC or MIDI, the addresses for these two will be similar, and your MIDI and your OSC gets messed up. There are no hidden names for this, so the outward facing name is the one that is used in Wire or in Resolume. So you always have to have unique names for all your parameters. So I cannot add 2 scales to it and then in the future don't have strange conflicts. So let's call this scale M for motion, or A for animation. Let's call it A. This one will be rotation A. So it's always a bit of a search to find the right names for everything. Is the scale already working? Ah, yes, but we added the scale after the multiplication. So let's move this around. Then we can remove this. Add here another input and put our pearl in here. And then multiply it by 3. So scale 0, rotation 0. Just add a bit so we can see. This will be our y or x a. Oh, x a. Let me do that there. We add this to that one. Does it work like this? No, it does not, because now we're moving, adding it to a float, adding a float 1 to a float 2. So it will move the x and the y axis, and we want to join them first. So we still need, we add a float 2, then add it there, and now add it here, and do the same thing for the other one. So now we have the minus and the max are getting the same value added, so our aspect ratio stays the same, otherwise this will stretch if you don't add it to the min and to the max. So that will be our y a amplitude. So now we have animation options for all our 4 spatial movements. Let's have a look. How much time did I spend on this? Yeah, let's add one animation option to this, and that is the random. The random needs event space trigger. So Resolume has 3 timing spaces. Attribute, that is something that is rendered when you load the patch. So your frame rate will drop, will stagnate a moment, and then it will recombine your full patch and start outputting again. Then you have a signal timing that will be your frame rate. So it locks to your frame rate, and all these inputs will update the next frame. And then you have event triggers, and those will be your CPU timing. So they'll be ultra fast. So you can calculate multiple things in the background before it will be updated and rendered. So it's very fast. The problem is it's not very intuitive. So I find it very hard to work with, because in your wires there will be no data like you see here. There's no value. And even if I like the beat, transform beat, let's play your beat. You see this is in event time. And if I add this to there, yeah, we have a value here now, but that is not always the case. And I find it hard to switch this. Switch. So what I want to do is, because we have here 5 timings, and I want to use those 5 timings. So we want to have 5 inputs here, and we want to switch it. And you can add multiple events to one trigger. And it is very handy, but it also sometimes makes it a bit intuitive, or not so intuitive, because you don't know what is triggering at what time. But that's very powerful of it. But in this case, I want to output here something, and float. It's not outputting here anything, and I'm in the right timing but I don't know how this now will work. So the workaround for that is use your flow, the flow setting, the signal setting for your beat transport, and use it like that. Now we can select our different different inputs, and what I do here is when it's divides by the floor value. Floor will take away all your behind the comma. So this will only be our true values. We don't have to do this. We can say on change. So this will detect when this value changes. And now we can use that to trigger our random. It's been a bit convoluted, but now we can, like you can see, we can select our timing. And if you want to have a more intuitive version of here, you can say we have 4 counts, 4 option counts, 1 on 1, 1 on 2, 1 on 4, 1 on 8, 1 on 16. So now we have all our timings exposed. And now we have random values. And for me to convert this to signal time, I use a float and convert it to signal time. Sometimes some parameters are a bit, I don't know how they react when they get an event trigger. So I like to have a signal stream. We can use a smooth here. This will smooth out all those the new values we get. And I think we want to have 4 because we have 4 parameters we want to animate. So we can choose our instances here and say 4. And we say split. So when this dotted line indicates that we have 4 data instances running through this wire, and you can split them to get all your different values out of there. And we can add these, let's add 2 together in a float 2. And then we have our values to add here. So this will be our spatial movement. Let's add one here for our rotation. And let's add another one for our scale. The random only wants event timing for its settings. So that will be a bit harder to control. So if we want to scale this, we can use a crossfade, add our value here and our output there, and now we can use our mix value for our random motion. So this is a different type of motion type I wanted to add. So you can see it reacts very differently than the Berlin noise. If you want to make it more smooth, you can output this. The value of this is the duration is in seconds. So now you can see it's a a lot smoother. If I go very high, it will make very small jumps. Yeah. So I think we build a lot. There's enough stuff for you to build something of your own for this. The added value of this is that you can add all these values to your MIDI, and then you don't have to build strange stuff to control an animated transform, because that is something we are missing now. You can animate and create envelopes for your transform and effect, but then you cannot control them anymore through MIDI. So when you build it like this, you can still have your default transform options and also animate it through or control everything through MIDI. So I hope you liked it. And have fun building it. Bye.